All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Everybody here in this room and people joining us online. Thank you and welcome to day two of the AIForFood Global Summit. We had a really stellar event yesterday. What we've learned is we can be provocative in our panel, and that's okay. And I would love for this to carry on for this panel as well and the rest of the day. The idea really here, just to kind of reinforce what we said yesterday, was we're all here because number one, we're interested in the confluence of AI and the food industry. So the AI for food is the platform for us to discover what we know, share what we know, discover what we don't know, and find out what else is out there. And in this journey, I would encourage everybody to share their point of view here on the panel. What do they think about what is AI and food? And share their vision of the future. What should it be? What can it be? And even what it should not be. And again, this is everybody's personal opinion, their stand, and through their experiences, we would love to understand, what direction makes sense for us individually and as a group. So, with this, let us kick the panel off today. So, I would like to introduce our panelist, Simona. Please introduce yourself and let's talk about, your perspective.
Okay, thank you, Vinay. Hi, everyone. I'm Simona Fernandes. I sit on the ventures team for Plug and Play Canada, specific to the food and beverage vertical. So that's everything right from ag tech to processing, packaging technologies, any supply chain and sustainability within that food umbrella as well. So my background is in food science. I completed my Master's of Food Science from University of Alberta. Worked in a couple of food industries in food safety and product development. First in Sofina, then in Bimbo Canada and Star Produce, and then came on to the venture side. And yeah, let me introduce Plug and Play a little bit as well. So, Plug and Play Tech Center, we are essentially a venture capital firm based out of Silicon Valley. It's where we started around 18 years ago, and we've been expanding ever since. So, we are in 60 plus locations as of now. And we say, besides the poles, I think we are in every other continent possible. And yeah, Plug and Play. So when we started off, it was our CEO who was a refugee who came to Silicon Valley, and then he started off with a real estate building. So he had a building that he rented out to a few people. And then these few people turned out to be the founders of Google and Logitech. So he had the fortune to invest into these companies early on. And then we took this model and we really took it off the ground. And now we have the plug and play model that stands. And then when we look at innovation, we're looking at innovation in three buckets. So the first one is our venture capital arm, where we're investing in pre-seed and seed stage companies from the CEO's family fund. And we're investing in any company that's heavier on the B2B innovative technology side. So if you have an IP associated with your technology, if you have software, we get really excited about that. We've been called the number one early stage investor in Silicon Valley by PitchBook. And we have around 31 unicorns under our belt. And 31 is the number we are allowed to say in public. But yeah, we also went through our investment number 2000 just last month. And yeah, we invest in 250 companies a year. And we're looking at not leading any investment round. So if you're going to invest in your company, we usually put 50,000 to 100,000, and we are the third or fourth check in. So that's the venture capital side of Plug and Play. The second thing we're doing is corporate innovation. So we have an ecosystem of corporate partners within food and beverage that would be PepsiCo, Coke, Mars. And how we work with these corporates is we run ad hoc deal flows for them. So they would come to us with a problem statement. And then we would connect them to startups within our database that are working exactly on the solution spaces that they're looking for. And we hope that that connection then goes on to be a paid pilot, a paid partnership. Sometimes the venture capital arms of these companies also tend to invest into the companies they meet with. So making the connection is what we do, and then we let the companies take it from there. And the third thing we're doing is our accelerator programs. So we're running a 3-month worth of a business development program, and BCDI Labs was also a part of this program where we get to foster companies into growing. And then at the end of the program, they get to pitch to our local ecosystem of investors and corporate partners. So that's kind of like the high level of plug and play. And to answer your question, Vinay, so plug and play has seen a lot of companies in AI and food. So we have around 91 companies that are AI and food, and all the way, right from ingredient formulation, product development to uh, automation and warehousing and supply chain as well. And the first founded company was in 2005. And since 2005, we've just gone on adding some more companies to our ecosystem. And this is companies that also include food adjacent. So we see AI in ag tech, we see AI in animal health, early disease detection for crops, which helps increase yield, early disease detection for cattle, that can also be dairy cattle. It tells you if your cattle is going to be sick in a few days, it tells you if your cattle is going to be pregnant. So yeah, we've seen a lot of technologies in AI. AI has been around for a while. Within AI, I personally feel that most of the technologies we are seeing right now are very sensor dependent. So we have sensors, IoT, that's in place. And most of the technologies look at one particular aspect, or we're monitoring one aspect, and then we take the data from that and we give you predictive analysis of what you're going to see in a couple of days. And that's what we're seeing right now, which is amazing. But I feel like something that we've been missing is an end-to-end solution. AI, which looks at ingredient development, product development. It also looks at your warehousing, supply chain, any optimization in your fleet as well. So something that gives you an end-to-end solution. And even if you look at one of the companies that we're seeing at Plug and Play right now is called Dovika. They're looking at end-to-end coffee supply chains. So they have sensors that are right from ag tech, from where you grow your coffee plants, all the way up to the different processes, and then supply chain as well. So I think that is something that we want to see as an investor, where you have all of these solutions put together. Thank
Excellent. You just described the food and bev ERP. Well, that's great. Thank you. I'll just hand it over to Aaditi Tamhankar from Bluestein Ventures. Thank you. Let's turn it on.
Hello. Okay. Hello. My name is Aaditi Tamhankar. I am at Bluestein Ventures. So my background, I went to undergrad at Wharton in Philadelphia, spent 4 years there. I knew from a very early age I wanted to be in this food innovation space. My freshman summer of college, I interned at a food technology startup, which at the time was creating the world's first plant-based alternative to raw tuna. And from that experience, did various other things. When I graduated, I worked in strategy consulting with a firm that did a lot of work in food and bev. So yeah, it was a great pivot to come to Bluestein. I've been with the team for over a year now. And Bluestein Ventures, we are a VC fund in Chicago, pretty early stage. So we generally invest seed stage. We've been around for 10 years. So this is our third fund. We're investing out of a 45 million fund. And yeah, we invest in the future of food and have an interest in the broader wellness space. So our investments really fall under 4 areas. So we see, digital technology, could be supply chain tech, restaurant tech. Second area would be food technology. So it's companies with a lot of IP, novel ingredients, new types of manufacturing. And then third area would be next gen commerce. So that's any type of innovative omni-channel retail or B2B marketplace where it didn't exist before, things like that. And our final category would be high growth consumer brands, hoping to invest in, the brands of tomorrow and brands we all love in grocery and retail. So yeah, those are the four areas. And then to answer the question about AI and food, we are seeing a lot of excitement around that. We've actually recently published a few articles on our Substack, so be sure to check it out. But yeah, we really see AI and food in three buckets. So the first one would be AI within consumer, and I think this is super exciting. We've seen so much interest from consumers about AI. I would argue that consumer adoption of AI has been faster than enterprises, which is like, which technology can you think of where that's the case, that consumers are just way ahead of the curve? So yeah, that's super exciting. And within that space, what we're really looking at is an end-to-end solution that would help consumers manage their health. So we're seeing so much interest in wearables such as continuous glucose monitors and your Fitbit, your Apple Watch. And we're seeing consumers use all of these devices. But yeah, we think there's potential for new types of devices, maybe that can measure hormone health, real time, continuous. And then how do you integrate all of that information to give data driven, personalized medicine recommendations and really democratizing that functional medicine space? That's where we're super excited about. And then the other two areas, we see a lot of AI within food R&D. Obviously, a lot of opportunities there. Food R&D is very inefficient right now. It's like a 70 to 90% new product failure rate. So how can you bring that down? How can you create products that are healthier, that appeal to consumers more? So yeah, that's been really exciting. And the third area would be AI within operations. And I think this area is exciting because it's almost like a low-hanging fruit. Like companies are already generating a lot of data within their operations, whether it's supply chain or warehouse operations, but really how can we push that to the next level? So it could be, using sensors to gather like new types of data, and then how do you digest that data for insights? So yeah, those are really the three areas that we're most excited about.
Thank you. And looking into the future, what would you see? What is your vision that AI and food should be?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that there's so much excitement around AI today, and then how can we really generate value from that, right? How is this not the next like tech hype cycle? So yeah, I think the vision is making people's lives better, right? Ultimately, that's what matters. No one likes tech for the sake of tech. It needs to have an impact, and that's what I'm most excited about, is to see that impact, whether it's within R&D or operations or consumer.
Thank you, Aditi. Hand it over to Cam from Red Stick.
Cam Crowder, general partner, Red Stick Ventures, co-founder. We're early stage venture fund focused on food adjacent technologies across the food supply chain. So my personal background, I was actually a Tim Hortons franchisee for 14 years. I had 6 locations, 200 employees, pretty big business, and I'm based out of Canada. And what happened in Canada is kind of, I guess, like 7 years ago, is what's happening in California, where the all of a sudden minimum wage went up, government mandated it, and it fundamentally changed our business, where there was a ton of turnover. And I started to, like, I'm a pretty competitive guy. I got upset, like, we treat our employees right. Why do we have this 125% turnover? Started to get into it and understand that our employees would leave for a 5-cent raise an hour because of how unstable they are financially. So kind of started to go down this path of how do you make the jobs better in food and make angel investments around it, and just kind of burn the boats of like understanding like how good of an opportunity this was to jump into investing in this digital transformation, robotics, AI. So sold the restaurants in 2021, moved out to Silicon Valley, worked at a venture firm called VU Venture Partners to understand how to do deals. Met my business partner, Shane Larzy, a mechanical engineer. So we have a really interesting angle of how we at Red Stick invest kind of through an operational lens with like a really like technical kind of angle that we can look at things. So currently investing at a fund one. We have 7 portfolio companies ranging from robotic AI solutions in food service to AI growing in greenhouses, and we dabble a little bit in precision fermentation, which we think is a big opportunity. But really focused on B2B solutions. And like everybody else kind of said, is like really delivering a good ROI, not just like some fancy tech. There has to be an ROI. Yeah, so the way we think about investing in AI is really, Maxine talked about it a little bit yesterday, is that this proprietary data is really where we think the opportunity is. And also like whoever the founders are, they have to have like industry experience. We think AI is like an amplifier. We don't see it as a be all end all. And we think you need to have that proprietary data or really industry knowledge. And then you're leveraging AI with technical experience on your team to kind of like prove out ROIs in that way. So that's kind of how we think about it.
All right, and your vision looking forward.
The vision is, and I think in food, I touched on it, like really like my mission originally was that, you know, how do you pay people in food? Food's like a volume play with low margins. So how do we're coming up against a labor crunch here that a lot of people don't understand, of like a working ratio to retired ratio of potentially 2-to-1, and in Asian countries 1-to-1. So we don't see like robots and AI as like an end-to-end solution at this point. We think it's like an amplifier of labor, to be able to prop up the economy, because if we don't fill these jobs, we're going to be in big, big trouble. And that kind of gets missed a lot of times. So we see it as like, how do you pay someone at a Dunkin' Donuts $25 an hour, make it a good job, the business owner can make money? That's kind of where we think it's going to go. Yeah. So operational efficiencies, things like that.
All right, thank you. Hand it over to Jacob from ITSC.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. So I'm Jacob Berry. I'm with the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. We are an entrepreneurial support organization here located in Chicago. Our work specifically is around startups and making corporate connections. My background, I went to University of Kansas for 4 years. From there, moved to Israel for about 6 months, 6-7 months around the COVID time to do, foreign affairs, international business. I worked very closely with one of the political organizations out there that work to help expand the network of corporates and manufacturers in Israel, around the world, to help with these connections. And with Israel being such a big player in food tech and agricultural space, I got really well connected within this industry. Following that, I moved back here to Chicago, and worked for the Israeli consulate in there as the commercial and economic director, helping to facilitate introductions and connections between Israeli companies in the Midwest. And with both Midwest and Israel being huge in this ag tech and food space, I got very well connected within this industry and got to know a lot of the space, and how the new technologies are coming out. At ISCC, we do a lot of work, as I mentioned, with founders and creating these corporate connections. We do get to know a lot of the cool technology that's coming out. And with our newest endeavor that we're working on with the state, the Illinois Innovation Voucher Program, we're helping to partner new, smaller companies with universities to do R&D. So we're able to give up to about $75,000 per project per company to do a lot of these research projects, to help take their technology to the next step. And so we're getting to really get to know a lot of the emerging technologies that are coming out of here in Chicago and Illinois in general. We see a lot of things coming out of Urbana-Champaign. We're looking at Chicago, Northwestern, really all around the state itself, and getting to see the food tech and the space that's coming up and exposing, and not exposing, but expanding up here. So it's been a really cool experience to be able to work within the space and see a lot of these new technologies that are coming out, and specifically with food tech and AI, we're seeing so much pop up. I think for those of you who are here in the last couple of years at the World Business Chicago Venture Summit, they've had 2 food tech, or 3 food tech now, I think, showcases, which is really bringing together and highlighting the community that's here and seeing all of these new AI that's coming out, and learning about new consumer technologies that are bringing solutions to a lot of the problems that we're seeing. And so I think it's been interesting to see the rise of AI in every space in the food tech industry, whether that's in consumer, whether that's in the ag tech space, whether that's in the creation of recipes. I think it's been something that's really interesting to see expand. Personally, I'm excited to see more on the consumer side, I love to cook myself. And so being able to come up with new recipes and utilizing even ChatGPT to come up with these recipes, I think is, a really cool opportunity when I have a bunch of food that's in my fridge, but I don't know what to make. And I'll just ask ChatGPT to tell me, what can I make out of this? Do I need to just get a few more things and what can be created? And then on top of that, seeing some more of the products are coming out for individuals. My fiance, who is not very good at cooking, I think would benefit a lot of these tools and in my mind, toys that are coming out to play with in the AI space, teaching you how to mix things together, your timing and everything. I think it's a really cool opportunity to see AI growing here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jacob. So thank you for the introductions and for sharing your experience and your vision as well. I made some notes here. We talked about volume. We talked about creating an end-to-end platform. And you're all very familiar with early stage investment in companies. First, second, third checks. So when you look at startups and we look at the startup founders, you look at ideas. You want to make sure that this succeeds into a volume play, right? So you take that. And you have larger organizations, CPG companies, large ingredient companies who have the volume today. How do you help your investment companies, your portfolio companies, take what they have and work with the companies, the corporates, and take that to the next level? What's your take on it? How do you approach it?
For me, I would say Vinay, right through Plug and Play, we're already introducing them to several corporate partners through our Plug and Play network. The first thing that we do is we tell our startup founders to leverage us completely, leverage our networks, leverage our international offices. So each of our offices have different verticals, and each of these verticals have corporate partners associated to it. So if you go through our program, or if you're just within the Plug and Play ecosystem, we work in a one-way stream where our corporate partner would come to us with a technology request. But if you are a portfolio company, you can basically look at the logos on our website, point out to one of the logos, and we will make sure that we make that introduction for you. Now, we cannot guarantee that that company is going to work with you or if you're going to be a good fit for that company, but we will make sure that we make that introduction for you for sure. There was one company called Enter Technologies that is our portfolio company. So they are basically a food product generating, like a label generating company. So they make NFT labels based on the recipes that you submit to them. They're one of our portfolio companies. We meet with them once a month at least, and they were looking for an entry point to Canada. So they are in the US and they're looking for an entry point to Canada. Now, since we have a Canadian office, our US team just directed them straight to the Canadian office. I was able to get them in touch with some of the CFIA officers within Canada. And then in my previous company, I used to work with another software that was out of Canada that's a lot more expensive than the one that they're creating right now. So what I did was I reached out to my colleague at Star Produce and I told her this is a company that I'm looking at. They would like to see, someone demo their product. And then if you like it, they might be at a cheaper price point. So you might want to take a look at it, give them some feedback. So in the process of giving them some feedback, they liked the product so much that they met with the company and now they are a full paying customer. So I feel like just using each of our individual networks and all of us on the team, like on the ventures team, we all have technical backgrounds and we've all come from different technical industries. So use us, like leverage our networks, our investor networks, our corporate networks to help you scale and grow.
Excellent. I think this is where a big boost to the startups on the accelerator side. Jacob?
Yeah, I have one. I think we try to introduce when you're selling B2B to big enterprise companies, like the sales cycle's long. So if there's a way to kind of hack that and cut it in half, it's important. So we definitely try to help Plug and Play, but they're obviously probably the best in the world at that. But I think the job of the investor is not to run the business. The job of the investor is to help the entrepreneur pick their head up out of the weeds and then help them look at the landscape a little bit differently. So we try to focus on the fundraising aspect of it. We talk to bigger funds, Series A. We try to like understand what metrics they're looking for to get funding, whether it's like a 3 million ARR right now for Series A at like a 80% gross margin or whatever. Like, let the founders understand that so they can work on their business and not worry about. I was talking to a founder this morning about this. Is that it's better to focus on building a business as a founder than focus on building a business to raise money, right? That kind of ship has sailed after the whole bubble bopped in 2022, 2021. It's about building good fundamental businesses. So the entrepreneur should be focused on that. We can look at the landscape of financing and understand like where the opportunities are, what your valuation should be, those type of things, and come from like a support perspective. So that's how we look at it.
Get back to the basics.
Yeah, sure. So at ISCC, we do kind of somewhat similar work to Plug and Play. We are a corporate connector, although obviously not to the same level that Plug and Play does. We're fairly tied into the ecosystem here in Chicago, with a number of our board members being corporates. And we really see the connections as the way that can help support a lot of the startups that we work with. For instance, we host regular dinners with a cohort that we call the Executive Founders Program, where we'll bring in about 5 to 6 underrepresented founders to connect and network with these corporates. And we see these dinner opportunities as a way to really expand their network, to really expand and create an opportunity for them to have real, authentic conversations with corporates. You know, when you're in a networking room and you have 100 people there, it's hard to really make these in-depth good connections that will help you to expand your network, expand the work that you're doing. We hope to see partnerships and deals come out of this, but even connecting one startup with, if you're in the water tech space with an Evergy or a different big corporate here in the city, you're expanding your network that they know and being able to help them or have the corporate help introduce the startups to even more people. And we see this as an opportunity that really helps to grow these startups, as the networking aspect we think is what's going to be one of the most successful and important parts in creating your startup.
Yeah, I would second everything that's been said. I think at Bluestein, we have very deep networks in the food industry. We've been investing in this space for 10 years. So even some of the LPs in our portfolio can be, our strategics in the food space. So yeah, always happy to make those connections. And yeah, especially in this market, second on fundraising, I think, we can be very helpful in that. Investors know what other investors are looking for, whether that's perfecting a pitch deck, a data room, making those introductions. Yeah, we tend to be very hands-on and help with all of that as the founder needs.
Thank you. I think, when we look at food tech and we look at food and food tech, a lot of founders have a good amount of experience in ingredient development or product development and research and R&D coming from food science and so on. And now we have AI. And so what would be your guidance to those kind of founders who are building new ingredients, new formulations, novel ingredients out there, who may be thinking about using AI or just about getting ready to that, and they want to see how do we use AI to the fullest? In your experience, what would be your suggestion to them?
I think it's moving so fast that you have to get involved in newsletters and read as much as you can because it's moving at the pace of computing power. We were talking about it last night, right? So I think the idea is know where it's going, understand where the advanced technology is. Don't get too far in the weeds in what you're doing, that you're not picking your head up to understand where the tech's going. And then the second part is kind of more along the lines of you have to have an ROI initially. And a lot of times you can get lost in building a really good solution that maybe nobody wants. I think you need to understand what your corporate partners are looking for, build that solution. And then with AI, I think there's always going to be this data play that's a bigger play, but you have to have a wedge of an ROI. You talked about what you guys are doing is and Maxine talked a little bit about R&D is a great spot because you can amplify your team and get more done, right? And I think that's part of it, but there's also a bigger play with AI and organizing your data and things like that. So that's kind of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I would for sure second this. Don't be like a hammer seeking a nail. I think that we think about that a lot. Yeah, you want to build something that is useful, that has commercial value, and is way better, like at least 10x better than what's currently being used. At least from like a venture perspective, I think sometimes founders underestimate the switching costs, right? Because the most food tech, right, you have to hit a certain scale to make that like a commercially viable business and technology. And oftentimes that does mean working with corporates, which have really long sales cycles. So yeah, you want to make sure that you come in with the solution that really blows them away. It's not, because if their current solution is maybe 80% as good as yours, like they're probably not going to switch. Like you can have a better solution. That doesn't mean that they'll adopt it. So to increase that chance of adoption, yeah, you have to have a really great product. As for whether to use AI, whether not to, I think if you just look at the bottleneck in your business right now, like is the bottleneck that your product needs to be better and AI can really help with that? Or is the bottleneck, you don't have enough relationships with strategics or, maybe you have other kind of like production or manufacturing issues, which AI can also help with, but maybe a bit longer on implementation there. So yeah, I think the question of whether to use AI or not is just what is your objective and can it really drive value for your business?
I think I, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would definitely agree with that. I think that AI, there's so many benefits to it. I don't think that, or I think that even just at the, the business level where you're working and writing an email or putting something together, AI is something that can be, a great assistance. I've worked or used it for just even writing together a small email or something or a small speech. It's very beneficial. And I think you're seeing it in coming out in so many different ways in this space. Again, as large as food tech can be, whether that's in the ag tech space or in restaurant tech with the AI, I think there's definitely room for it. I do feel like I think someone had mentioned how AI in restaurants have been something that we're going to have to look at. I think it was you adopting more and more. So I feel like I was reading an article the other day, though. I think that a lot of people, a lot of consumers who are going to restaurants are looking at wanting that human connection. I think we lost a lot of that in COVID times. And having the opportunity to continue to have that face-to-face space, I think is a reason why people still go to restaurants. And so having robots coming in, I think, yes, maybe in the back of house, it could be very helpful to help fill some of those spaces and those jobs. But I don't think in every single space, we need AI in every single way. I think that having that human aspect together is something that's very beneficial and something that can really help, some of these even restaurants continue to succeed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it depends on what you're doing as a business. And if you're not able to use AI for the core part of your business, use it, leverage it for all of the other parts. Like with AI, you have a content developer for you. You have to make sure you use the tools at your disposal to make your product be seen, make your company process, your tech be seen, put it out there, like be visible. Use AI in a way that you can, put yourself on the map and just use it in different ways. Use it to get yourself organized. You don't just have to use it for your hardcore technology. And again, like based on our discussions yesterday as well, for AI to function, your data has to be really, really solid. You need to have quality data. And if you don't have a background of data, you can use AI in so many other ways to just like free up some of your time to get your actual work done.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, this has really, really been a good insight into the confluence of food and AI. And if you were to, when you look at the food ecosystem, you're looking at demand, you're looking at the R&D, you're looking at manufacturing, you're looking at logistics, endpoint delivery, retail, grocery stores, or other services, food services. In your experience that's happening right now, where is the most innovation? Where is it happening the most? And which do you think, what would be your insight based on your experience that upcoming startups and founders should be focusing on? What are the problems that you think they should be looking at? What is happening today? What should be they looking for tomorrow? If they're looking for a problem to solve based on your experience.
I think I touched on it, the labor issue. Like it is a big problem.
Labor.
Like population collapse, like where that is a big problem. So you touched on it. Like I think in restaurants specifically, it's like the Wizard of Oz kind of angle of like whatever's behind the curtain, like who cares? Like if you go to a McDonald's or Burger King, you're not gonna really want to watch it made. Like you don't care as long as you get the fries are warm and everything's good. Like that's what we're looking for. So I think the opportunity is really these like AI, hardware, robotics solutions in the back of house and in manufacturing. I think that there's going to be like a really hardware play that's going to come about because it's going to be a lot faster and quicker. Like we're seeing the bomb and a lot of these robotic solutions to be like 10 grand, where like 5 years ago it'd be 120 to develop it. So Hyphen, like a Chipotle back company, it costs like 200 grand to build their solution. There's now solutions doing very similar things with a 10K bomb. So I think that that's like the evolution of robotics and AI kind of like decreasing in cost and energy. So I think there's a big opportunity there.
Okay. Aditi?
Yeah, I was going to say we are in a healthcare crisis. So maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but a lot of it is driven by diet and lifestyle. So I think there's a huge opportunity there to empower consumers to manage their own health. I think a lot of previous solutions have, tried to go through the healthcare system, which, we know is a mess. It's super expensive. It's slow. It's inefficient. So yeah, how can you really empower people? Whether that's, innovative modules of health. So one of the companies we recently invested in is called Arise, and they are creating a virtual treatment model for eating disorders. So yeah, kind of changing the modality of care can be helpful. But yeah, I think there's huge opportunity in wearables and how can you prevent disease rather than treat it. We see opportunities in food as medicine. So yeah, I think there's opportunity for AI to really accelerate that and have preventative medicine, functional medicine available to all and not just the rich and wealthy.
I think I'd say, really in this large language model space, the chatbots, at ICC, we're working with a number of different companies that are trying to develop a larger or a bigger large language model. So we're working with a few companies that are in the cancer space, being able to have a chatbot where you can ask questions about your treatment. We're seeing other ones who are trying to put together ones even in construction tech. We have a company that's coming together to compile calls for proposals for constructions and for industrial sites, and being able to utilize the AI large language model to compile all of these documents to help sift through the proposals and cut it down and really decrease this time. I think AI is something that's coming in and really helping to quicken up the pace of things at work. And so continuing to advance what we're doing in the space and the work, everywhere. I think that AI is kind of helping to quicken up the work in the world that we see here in here.
Sure.
I was thinking on the same lines of health, but in terms of the microbiome. So I think we need more research in that space to know the gut-brain axis, to research the gut-brain axis and the different prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics that we require in our diets. We've now come to learn that your gut microbiome is what is responsible for a lot of other health disorders as well, and personalized nutrition around that, and how to look at your gut microbiome, which microbes do you need in your gut. I think that is a space that we've been exploring. Another one I would add is the sustainability space. I think someone yesterday on the panel mentioned that 40% of the food that is produced is wasted. In Canada, that number is at 60%. 60% of the food in Canada that is produced is wasted because it doesn't reach the consumer in time or it gets spoiled. So anything on the sustainability side, food upcycling side, scope 3 emissions is another space that a lot of our corporates are really interested in right now. So any technology in that space is also where we would be looking at.
Excellent. I think, when we look at food, for those who are not aware, food is really the number one, human produced sustainability emissions. So human produced emissions for sustainability, it's about 34%. So really number one. And when you look at food, you're looking at, if we want to produce food sustainably, we want to make food nutritious, personalized, or even general, we have to make it affordable for the consumers. And we have to, like somebody mentioned, we don't want it to be a cardboard. So it has to, like Mike mentioned yesterday, so it has to taste good. But if you look at these four parameters, sustainable, nutritious, affordable, and delicious, it's almost like a rectangle, but you can't balance it. It's almost becoming a trapezoid or some other form rather than a rectangle. How from your experience, how do companies or startups in the ecosystem, how can they influence making this possible? What would be the first thing we should look at? Should it be, yes, I want to make it sustainable, but we should, maybe it's a cost compromise first. Maybe we focus on cost, make sure it's good, make sure it's nutritious, then come into sustainable. How would you prioritize sustainable, nutrition, affordability, and taste?
I'll say taste is king. It has to taste good. Yes, that's why we're all here, right? I don't want to live in a future where my food tastes like cardboard. So yeah, that's definitely important to me. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, for us, taste is king. If we're investing in any type of food or food technology, like we're big believers in trying the product. And let me tell you, there's a lot of not great products out there. So I think right now a lot of companies are compromising that taste aspect for, better nutrition, better sustainability. So yeah, I think taste is number one. But I will say I'll challenge the question a little bit. One of the trends we're seeing is just a huge rise in GLP-1s. For weight loss, and a lot of the effects of these drugs is it changes consumers' perception of taste. It'll make people like stop craving the pizza and the junk food, and suddenly they're craving fruits and vegetables. Maybe they're eating a lot smaller portions, and we just really see this space like exploding. I think we think a lot more Americans are going to be on these drugs, and there is an effect on the food industry from that. So maybe, we are developing products for that population that has, those like maybe more natural taste buds or altered taste buds. So I definitely think there's an opportunity there for GLP-1 companion products. And another thing we've seen is consumers aren't on these drugs for life. Oftentimes they're on the drug, they lose a bit of weight, they get off the drug, maybe the weight comes back on, then so it's kind of a cyclical thing, right? So how do you really support people to keep the weight off and change their diet and lifestyle through the help of these medications? And I think in the past, it's very hard to change someone's like taste buds, and these medications are enabling some of that.
That's a good point. I would also say I think taste is number one. As someone who does like to cook, I think taste is incredibly important. And as we're looking at these new foods that are coming out, I would also have to say that I think number two would have to be costs. I think that the economy hasn't been the best. We're seeing rises in prices, inflation's going up constantly, and I don't think we want to make these alternative foods, alternative proteins, restricted, and only people who can afford it can buy it. I think it needs to be something that's affordable for everyone. Nutrition is important, but I feel like that'll come along with a lot of the materials that are going into making these foods. But I think it could be anyone's game.
Yeah, I'll touch on. I think I'm kind of more like I would love a pill that I could take that I wouldn't like have to like everything's good and I know that all my nutrition's taken care of and then I can just eat the muffin after or something. Like I don't know. But the cost is the most important. I think like food's volume, it's low margin. We've had a big inflationary period here. I think like when you look at the opportunity in food service, restaurants, and food businesses in general is the P&L. How can you attack the P&L? And there's three things really in food service: food, paper, labor. So if you can find some efficiencies in labor using AI, or you can find some efficiencies in ingredients that are a little bit cheaper, but maybe not lose in nutritional value, And then obviously like sustainable packaging and things like that on the paper side, that's price parity. I think those are the things that are like really interesting that could move the needle from a cost perspective.
I think personally, I'm a little different from the three of them because I would think that nutrition comes first, but I do realize, like being in the food space, that not everyone thinks that. So as an investor, when I look at it, I'm going to look at something that'll scale faster, something that'll grow faster. And what most of the consumers like is taste and cost, of course. In Canada, we've seen the cost of grocery go up by like 30 or 40% just in the last 2 years. So I know that cost plays a very important role here. And in terms of cost as well, looking at any technology that gives you like cost comparison between the different groceries, and then some technologies that help consumers show them, okay, which product is cheaper in which grocery store. I think that could also be interesting because we have been seeing our consumers pick their grocery store based on, say, if I consume chicken a lot, I'll go to the grocery store that has the cheapest chicken. So I know that for a fact. So when I look at it from an investment perspective, I would definitely say taste and cost. But personally, I think I would pick something that's more nutritious.
Okay, well, that's good insight. And when startups are looking to work with corporates, um, is the pitch, will that resonate with cost and taste, or are they looking for efficiencies, like how Cam is talking about? What would resonate in a B2B scenario for these startups?
I would think in B2B, cost is number one because every product development team at a bigger firm or a smaller firm is looking at reducing their costs, is looking at increasing their margins. So I think cost from a corporate's perspective, cost is really important. Of course, it has to have other efficiencies of being able to, give you the correct mouthfeel or the correct flavor notes or aftertaste compounds. Like sugar substitutes, for example. Yes, if you find something that is cheaper, you would like to use that. But if that has a really, really bad mouthfeel or aftertaste, you might not. So cost would be number one, but they're also looking at how it plays with the other ingredients in your product.
Yeah, I think cost is definitely number one when it comes to the corporates. I think we're seeing at a lot of the fast food restaurants, they're looking at implementing alternative protein meats into their foods a lot more often. So we're seeing, ones that are more successful if they do have the better mouthfeel, if they have that taste that they're looking for, but they want to be able to make sure that they are hitting their bottom line and really, that the cost is what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think I'm going to come in at a little bit different angle. It's like when you touched on it, like venture is a 10x kind of game. So like it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just got to show a 10x improvement. And really that's centered around like a go-to-market strategy or distribution. That's probably the hardest part of any business is like, how do you get it out there? You touched on like, you can have the best product, but how do you get it out there? You get it out there by having a 10x improvement. And people go, I want that, right? Because it's 10 times better than what I have. And when they bring it up the food chain from a B2B perspective, they're putting their neck on a line when we are coming with a really innovative solution. So like there has to be a big enough like ROI for them to like move it up the food chain fast. And in venture, like the difference between venture-backed businesses and like a lifestyle business is we're trying to get to $100 million in revenue ballpark. Like there's different exit multiples and things. So that 10x improvement feeds into the potential to get to be $100 million business in like 7 to 10 years. So that's really a really important part, like the improvement and how big that is.
Yeah, I would say cost is definitely the most important, but second to cost, I think sustainability is something a lot of the large companies are thinking of. They often have, internal goals they're trying to meet. Maybe it's investor pressure. So yeah, if you can demonstrate, greenhouse gas emission reductions, things like that, it can also be helpful. It probably won't make a product, but it's a good thing to have. Yeah, and then the second thing I would say within cost, the actual price of the product is important, but it's also, how much volatility is there. So for example, I'm seeing a lot of alternatives to eggs right now, and those egg alternatives are not actually driven by, health or ethical concerns or even sustainability. It's actually driven just by price. Like egg prices are fluctuating so much. There's been avian flus, and I think that'll just continue to expand. So a lot of companies are like, okay, can we use half egg and half, an egg replacer type product, and that'll just give us a lot more price stability for that input. So that can be helpful as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we're now getting to a point, getting to the end of our panel discussion here. And if you were from an investor, now you putting your investor hat on, all this time. Now let's put a consumer hat on, but then talk to the investor in you. And if you were to say from a consumer insight that you have from your experience and the experience now that you come in from working with the corporates as well, what would you look to invest, as an investor? What would you ask the investor in you to kind of look at? So we talked about nutrition, we talked about cost. Are there other things that we're missing from a technology perspective? Would you want them to be innovative in other areas?
Yeah, I think, wouldn't we all want to eat like a Big Mac and it's like healthy for you? Right? Like, isn't that kind of like the holy grail of like food? Is that like it hits on all the dopamine receptors that like make food addicting, but it's like good for you? That would be like something that I would want to get in. Maybe that's a pill, or maybe that's like, lab grown meats, or how that plays out. I think like that's sort of where we go. Like food was engineered to be like addictive, essentially, and fast food and sugars and salts and things like that. How do we make good food addictive for you?
Sustainable, nutritious, addictive food that is cheap.
Yeah. The holy grail.
There you go. There it is.
I would love that. I definitely would want to eat a product like that. But the way I'm looking at it is from not a consumer to an investor, but more of a, say, if I was the founder to an investor, I think more than the process or the product, I would want the investor to look at me, my capabilities, my ability to drive this business from X amount of revenue to that 10X phase, my ability to recruit a team that has all functions. And as a founder, I know that I'm not good at everything. So I look at what I'm not the best at, and I recruit team members who are really, really good at that. So while speaking to an investor, I would say that. As a consumer, it's a little difficult because I don't think the investor would listen directly to the consumer. So yeah.
Okay.
I think I'd say as a consumer, ease of accessibility, right? If I am, it's a Sunday and I might not want to be doing any cooking or anything, but if I could have a machine that kind of comes together and makes my dinner for me and for my next couple of lunches as well, so I can meal plan it that way, it'd be great to be able to have something that can kind of just work super easily, where I just buy the materials, throw it into a little bowl or something, and it's able to make everything how I want it. And I think that having that accessibility is something that's easier, whether it's for me or for other consumers who don't have the time or the patience to be able to make this food. Let's call them like single mothers or people who can't have the time to really do this. I think it's something having that accessibility to not have to put that time towards it sometimes is something that would be great.
Sure.
Something I think is a huge opportunity. So with a caveat, I've never seen a company actually doing what I'm about to say. So huge opportunities, good reasons why they aren't, but I would like to see a company being able to iterate in food as fast as companies are iterating in fashion right now. Right. So if you look at trends on social media, on TikTok, like these trends go like with lightning speed, whether it's Dalgona coffee, freeze-dried candy. And so there's so many trends out there. It's like, can a company just capitalize on that, make the supply chain, get the manufacturing down and produce a product in, not like 2 years, but maybe in a week? Like that would be really innovative. I also think there's a huge opportunity with some of the demographic transition we've talked about, serving consumers that right now are not really served. So for example, there's very little innovation in foods for the elderly. So, whether that's like maybe a healthier Jello, right? If people don't, have teeth, like that can be really innovative for them. And also, I mean, it's a huge demographic transition. Like the US is on the precipice of becoming a minority majority country, right? So we see brands like Siete really just growing. I think they're projected for 400-500 million in revenue now. And they built a brand off consumers that just aren't being served with the current products on the market. So yeah, I would be excited to see more innovation in that space.
So just to add to that, I think as a consumer, if I want to look at some technology, it would be as someone who cooks, I think most of the time that I spend cooking is mostly planning the cooking, planning going to groceries, planning what to get, how much to get. So I think I would tell the investor to invest in a space that probably gives you reminders. Hey, you're running out of this ingredient and this ingredient. This is what you have the most in stock right now. This is what you can create out of it. And if you do want some more ingredients, you should go to this particular grocery store because that's where you'll get the best price.
Okay, the smart fridge, but getting smarter.
Yes.
Excellent. So I think we'll open it up for any questions here in the audience and also online. So I'm looking at a couple of questions coming here, trickling in, but let me open it up to the audience here. Any questions you would want to ask our panelists? Just hold on a second. We need to get you the mic here.
So you all are investors, right? So here is my, it's kind of like a question. How would you rank if I give you taste, cost, and human health in terms of an investment angle, right? Keep in mind the good corporate mindset, ethical sense and thing. How would you rank each one of you?
Was it taste, cost?
Taste, cost, and human health.
I think as investors, early stage investors, we're focused on like companies that are going to be big in 7 to 10 years. So I think
That's your ROI. I get that.
yeah. But I'm just framing it. So like, I think there's two ways to think about it. You're thinking about Gen Z, and then you're thinking about the baby boomer demographic. So if you're thinking about the baby boomer demographic, I think you're putting cost first and then going down the list. If you're going Gen Z, I think taste and like modifying and like selection would be one, where cost would be like the third. So I think it depends on like what markets you're investing in to make that decision. I think you can broadly kind of put it across, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I think, does that answer kind of?
Sure.
When you all talk about ROI, of course, from B2B, it's on the customer side, right on that B. When you're looking for investing, I liked your comment around we're investing in companies that are going to have, ROI for you as VCs, and they're going to make it big in 7 to 10 years. Can you all maybe give me a couple of answers, maybe two of you or more, that talk about what does big mean? So when you're looking at early seed round, because most of you do seed, what does big mean for you guys? And then feel free on the Israel side to answer that too, because you're trying to expand, from the government side, right? So.
Said, what does big mean?
What does big mean? I mean, when you're making this determination, is 10 million big in 7 years as revenue? Is 100 million big? Is 200 million big? The reason I ask that is that in a lot of VCs that I've talked to, they seem to all have a different algorithm in their head. They, we'll give you 50K, 100K, 500K. Their outcome seems to all be different of what big means. So I'm just curious in general what you all think making it big means that you would feel like you made a good investment in 7 years.
I think it will largely have to do with the industry type. If it's a consumer product where you can make a lot more money for selling something for a little bit cheaper, bigger means something different than an industrial company that's selling massive products that cost $100 million or $1 million to make in the first place. So I think it really kind of depends more specifically on what it is that you're looking for, and at this industry more specific.
How about software?
Software. I think that lots of software is looking at these purchasing and B2B models that I think making closer to 10, 15, 20 million is looking at bigger for me in 7 to 10 years. But all these different industries that's coming out of Israel, they have all these different AI food and alternative proteins that's coming out. Israel is huge in this alternative protein space. They work with a number of organizations around the world that are able to really bring in new knowledge and be able to compare it. So I think you're looking at different types of costs that can really help to shape the way that this looks.
I think for me, it would be more than giving you a value. It's at what value would I invest in? So say if I have invested at point A in your seed round, I know that going ahead, you're going to have Series A, Series B, Series C, and all of these rounds will dilute me further as an investor, right? So for the amount of money that I put into your company at seed, when you do happen to either sell your company or go public, and when we make our money back, if we see a 10x or a 20, 30x, that's when I think I made a good investment. Now that can be any amount of money because I know that I will get diluted, since I'm investing early on. But if I do see that multiple, that's when I think it's a good investment.
So that's a good rule of thumb, 10x. Yeah.
So every fund has their own kind of niche of how they do it. So our perspective is it's a power law investing game. So if you're investing at a pre-seed stage or a seed stage, you're pretty much going to go to zero on 50% of your investments. So the idea is that every investment you make should have the potential to return your entire fund, right? So when you're thinking about big, that's what VCs are looking for, is that if in our portfolio we'll make 30 investments over 4 years, the odds are for us to be the best VC, we need to have 2 of those type of deals in our fund, right? So it's a power law game. It's needle in the haystack type of game. So you have to have the return profile in all 30 companies that could return your entire fund. That's our strategy. There's some funds that'll do doubles and triples versus home runs, but they're looking at more of a risk adjusted return in the way they do it. But typically, if you're just doing a quick math, it's $100 million, 10x revenue multiple, X, and then you putting in the rounds of dilution to see what your return would be is what VCs are kind of looking at.
That's really helping me to understand it for everybody in the audience as well. So, if you're looking to have a startup, et cetera, thinking about that seed, pre-seed round is how's the VC? I mean, I would like to be able to go to VCs with a plan that we already show them. This is how you're going to get 10, 15x of your money. Does that make sense? To be proactive rather than trying to figure it out.
And food's difficult. So food is really a more private equity-ish, right? So I don't know how you guys think about it, but that's where you're looking for these big scalable kind of opportunities where it's kind of hard to find these 10 baggers, right? Because food's a volume play, it's low margin. So that's where the food adjacent technologies are kind of the better bets because they're more scalable. It's typically software or it's a hardware solution that could be productized and across 5,000 restaurants sort of thing. But that's why the 10x and the 10x improvement is what's going to allow you to get to be $100 million company, because your go-to-market strategy is going to be a lot quicker because everyone's going to want your product, right? So you're kind of it's definitely more of an art than quantitative, I guess.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, food is hard for a lot of those reasons. But if we look at the IPO market, like Instacart, Kava, I mean, companies are still out there, exiting for high multiples. So yeah, it's really just dependent on the industry you're in and what the revenue multiple is like there. Like we go off revenue multiples. I think, for PE or public investing, it's a bit different. It's EBITDA multiples or something like that. So yeah, I think that's super important. And for us, like we need to see a path for a business to get to 50 to 100 million in revenue generally. And a lot of that is also how much will we get diluted. So that depends on how much capital that business needs. So if it's a software business, they probably don't need as much, right? But if it's a food tech or they're doing hardware, they're doing, like physical robotics and things like that, then it's like, okay, we're going to project maybe 65% dilution by the time that company exits. So the exit, just needs to be worth it. It needs to be high enough to make our fund.
Thank you. And we have a question here online. The question is, what is your criteria to pick companies in your portfolio? We heard from a financial perspective, it's about 10x in revenue. But outside of that, what is your criteria to pick companies in your portfolio?
Team, and then market would probably be the best way to explain it. Because at early stage, like you're going to pivot at some point. Like you have an idea what the market is initially. You're going to go to market. You're going to start talking to people. You're going to get feedback. And if you're a good founder, you're going to be able to pivot. And then someone else talked about like the influence aspect of it. Like when we make an investment and I talk to founders, I want to get the feeling, like we talked about, it's a needle in a haystack game, right? I want to get the feeling that if the next Google of food, I'm meeting with the founder, I should be reevaluating every single thing I'm doing in my life. If I'm sitting in front of, Larry Page and he's telling me, I want your money, I should have that gut feeling like I should quit everything I have going on to join what you're doing. I'm not going to do that, but I should have that feeling of like, this is a big opportunity. Like I'm influenced to want to like give you my money. That means that the person that's going to quit their job that's making 800 grand a year to go work at a startup for 80, they're going to do the same thing. Your customers are going to do the same thing. So you want to get that like gut feeling, I think, is important.
I think we look at the 4T model. So team being first, technology, traction, and then terms. So terms is different for every VC fund. But as Cam said, yeah, team is one of the most important ones because in your early days where we're investing pre-seed, we don't know any of the other T's more than we know the team. So team is the most important one. I would also say it has to be a deal that keeps you up. It keeps you up at night. Say if you take this deal to your partners and they're not as receptive as you are, you have to be worried about it. Like, why did they not see my excitement? Should I introduce them to the founders? I want them to see the founders' excitement as well. So any deal that keeps you up, I think that is the winning one.
All right, excellent. Aaditi.
Yeah, I think for us, yeah, second team. But we're also very thesis-driven investors, and venture capital is a business of separating the signal from the noise. So for us, we see over 2,000 deals a year, right? And we make, four to six investments. So how do you really identify those? So we do a lot of work, before even we talk to any founder. It's like, what are the areas that we're seeing a lot of innovation? Where's the opportunity? So for us right now, a lot of that is metabolic health, women's health, microplastics reduction, supply chain digitization. So we're actively looking for deals within some of these key thesis areas. And then, yeah, when we meet that founder, team is super important. So what's their unfair advantage, right? Maybe that founder has had, 20 years in healthcare and they know everyone in the space. They know all the insurance companies. Like, sure, it's very unfair, but that's something that is a moat, right? And then with team, it's also, can this person sell? I think selling is so important at that early stage. Like being a startup founder is not like being the HR at Google. Like if you're the HR at Google, like you don't need to sell working at Google, right? I mean, it's a pretty good job is what I've heard. But yeah, if you're an early stage startup, how can you get the right team members on board? How can you, pitch to investors? Like the pitch is important because we want to see that startup is going to be able to raise their Series A, Series B, and be super successful. So yeah, selling is huge in addition to having, a founder market fit and that unfair advantage.
So I think it's kind of fun that at ISCC we get to be in this space where we have these funds from the DCEO and we can be a little bit more easygoing about how we're giving out our funds. So looking at team is something that's very easy and I think is very important to look at. They're really going to be the ones who are able to take the technology from one step to the next to really advance it. But with having such a significant fund from the state, being able to give up to $75,000 per startup that we're working with, it's important for us at least to be able to be looking at the background of the science, looking at understanding to make sure that it checks out, that there's room for it to actually be successful, looking at the market around as well. So being able to compare if they have a strategic advantage, if they're going to be able to continue to hold this advantage over around the rest of the market that they're in, are all things that we're definitely looking at as we're deciding if we're going to choose this company or not for our voucher program.
Excellent. So one more question before I get in. Anybody else here in the audience? Any question? So the other question is for each of the panelists, and kind of wrap it up with this question. An investment that you were really excited about that made it, that did not make it.
Let's start with the bad news first. So we initially we did a syndicate before we did our fund, and we invested in this food delivery concept that was kind of like Instacart, but for like independent specialty grocers. So our thesis was saying that, minorities are taking over the majorities. There's a lot of immigrants coming in. There's going to be an opportunity to kind of be like a platform for like these like different types of like ethnic foods that are like kind of hard to stock other places. So long story short, we made a bit of an error on the founder side, and it didn't go as good, and it's kind of in the process of winding down. So that's a negative. The positive is kind of like you the holy grail that you're kind of talking about is this on-demand type of like food innovation. So a company called Botrista. I was an early investor in Botrista, and what they do is it's almost like a slushy machine that's you could use any product. So the founder is Sean Hasu. He's super technical. He designed batteries in Tesla with Elon Musk, and then went to get his MBA, and then started this company around like really the viscosity technology in good for you syrups, right? But now they're valued at 450 million. They just raised, I think it was 80 million round, and they're doing like really good. So that's the good and the bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the investments was, I guess on the negative side, was like a kind of B2B ingredients marketplace. And yeah, I think from there, it was just probably an error on the team, not being able to pivot, not being, very coachable, receptive to feedback. I think that rapid iteration is so important, just being humble as a founder and really listening to what the market is saying. And super important. I'd say a company I'm excited about now. They're not a home run yet, but they are now raising their Series A in our portfolio called Biome Sense. And this is on your point about the microbiome. So one of the main issues with the microbiome is that data set is not really there. It's not like, in genetics, we have a very comprehensive data set. They're creating that data set for the microbiome, and then they're using AI on that to develop biomarkers, right? How can you predict if someone will get a disease, or how can you detect that very early through changes in the microbiome? It's a Chicago-based company, and definitely excited to see them grow and develop. So I would say one that is kind of a home run in our portfolio. We were early investors in Factor 75, and they exited to HelloFresh. And kind of going off your point, like it was a great exit for us because we were able to get in very early at the right valuation. They didn't need to raise a lot of money and still, had a great exit. So from a cash on cash perspective, that was great for us. And our investment there was really just seeing like that drive for convenience and having healthy food options that, don't require you to, do a lot of meal prep and cooking. That's bizarre.
I think one investment that I'm really sad that didn't go through would be Dine. So Dine is AI in the restaurant space. So they're end-to-end AI in the restaurant space, so right from looking at your employee schedules to having your payments on their platform, all the way up to looking at menus. It detects what is the best season for your restaurant, what are the best times for your restaurant, and how you can alter your menu dependent on that. um, the evaluation for us. So when we met with Diane in the beginning, they were very, very early on. And we were not able to invest in them because they were so early on that we didn't see the potential at that time. And when they came back to us with their next round, they were raising at a valuation of 20 million, which is very high for us. So I felt like that is an opportunity that we missed on our end, just because of the valuation and how our funds are structured as well. And then there was another company that a colleague of mine was working on, Novella, which is basically precision fermentation for alternative coffee. And this is one of those deals where he didn't get sleep because we were not able to invest into that company. And every time we would meet as a team, he would bring up the company, guys, we missed getting into their round. And after 7 or 8 months, they opened another round. And I believe the deal was done mainly because of the conviction of my colleague. Of course, everything else was falling into place for us in terms of the numbers, the traction, the revenue that they were seeing as well. But yeah, I think it was the conviction of the VC as well that will take you all the way.
So still kind of being newer in the space with the in the investing side. And at IACC, luckily we get to work with a lot of like early stage companies that are still kind of figuring out their space that aren't necessarily looking for huge investments yet. I think I'm still kind of working on figuring out, an answer to a not so good investment, but I think one that we've been very excited about working with at ISCC, and that I think will be around here later, is Kadea, the water bottling machine that they have all over the state and the country now. They've had a chance to really connect, all over to construction sites, to military sites, and really be able to have an opportunity to expand their market, their community, while addressing, clean tech, but also within this water and food tech space, being able to connect with all these, helping to keep employees hydrated and healthy. So seeing Kadea play out has been, a really cool company to see.
All right, excellent.
Sorry, I need to wear my sustainability hat. I have to get out of the organizer hat. So really, I think you all spoke about the importance of AI, food, and sustainability. So if you could really give an example of some company that you invested in, which is really looking at the connection of AI, food, and sustainability, that is doing great. And because we know that after oil and gas, it's the food industry which is one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. So if you could really speak to some interesting initiative or a gap that you identify, that'd be great.
I think, there we go. A cool company that we've done a lot of work with is Aquaculture Food. So they're working on bringing in alternative proteins and alternative food to the fish market. So I think that's been a really cool, sustainable company that we've seen expand recently. And so they've been fun to see continue to grow. They've won a number of awards and funds and investments. So continuing to see them come along, I think, is a really cool and fun, clean tech, sustainable food technology.
Yeah, away from AI, but like sustainable packaging. We just made an investment in a company called Orthotic that, we all have coffee cups here with wax in the inside of it that holds a hot liquid. They're pretty much disrupting that, where it makes a paper product shelf stable, with whether it's liquids or heats or things like that. But those are like things where the market for packaging is like the biggest market as like a food kind of investor that you can get into. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, so I think sometimes this question of like waste prevention is put to the wayside. So we have an investment in not creating the waste to begin with, and it's a company called Airflow. So what they're developing is sparkling water on the go. So you can attach this lid to, some of the popular water bottles, Stanley, Hydro Flask, and the lid has a canister of CO2. And with the push of a button, you can create, whatever sparkling beverage you want, whether it's orange juice, water, soda, or, like juice of some kind. So what that would really do is prevent, all of these like aluminum cans and all that from even being created to begin with, right? So I think we're excited about that. We also have an investment in meaty, which is a mycelium-based alternative protein. And sometimes, I go into some of these food tech rooms and, alternative protein is like this elephant in the room that no one wants to touch or talk about. But I think that problem is still there, right? It's still not sustainable and our current trajectory is unsustainable. And I think the reason we were excited about meaty is that they're really touching that, having a great taste, being very clean label. It's like 5 ingredients, minimally processed, using mycelium to create that base. I think the problem is out there, and I think we're going to see that next wave of solution where it's not like a soy, wheat, pea extrusion, but it's something more natural and something consumers want.
So at Plug and Play, we have a whole vertical that is focused towards sustainability and clean tech. So most of our investments within that vertical are outside of food, I would say. We've had a couple of investments in the carbon capture space. After capturing carbon, how you store it. Some of the companies are in the hydrogen space, so convert your energy, store it in terms of hydrogen, and then use it after that. So most of our investments within the sustainability space, I would say, are outside of food at the moment, but I'm very excited to see if we get any within the food space.
Yeah, just one question I'd kind of take from what Ravi asked is, when you look at sustainability, there's a big push in the cultivated meat and the lab-grown meat on both sides, and there's a very heated argument going on today on the good, the bad, the not so good, the not so bad, and from an investor perspective, what is your take on this market?
So I think at the beginning of 2021, 2022 is when we saw a lot of companies within the alternative meat and cell cultured meat space emerge. I'm guessing it was also driven by the pandemic as well. And these companies got a lot of investment. And towards the end of 2022 is when we saw their, the companies that had made it big, like Beyond Meat, we saw their revenues go down. And we saw a lot of like investment in this space come to like slow down or come to a complete stop. And we do see investments in this space now, but out of all the companies that were created at that point of time, there's only few of them that are able to make it or to stay alive till 2023, 2024. So investment into the space from the plug and play side has definitely, seen a dip. But we do think that the key players are like, there are going to be a few winners that emerge out of this just based on who is able to raise that kind of money or use that technology. And one of the biggest challenges that these companies have is scaling up. So most of the companies that we've met are either in the 1,000-liter bioreactor space, going into a 2,000 or a 3,000-liter bioreactor. Where we've seen the challenge is for them to go from that small bioreactor to a larger bioreactor. So scaling up is where we've seen the biggest challenge. So very few companies have been able to make it to that 10,000 liter bioreactor space. And yeah, we are excited to see those going into the market further.
Cam? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, there has to be consumer demand for these products. So from that aspect, I think that's still an open question. And considering the amount of CapEx that these companies, it turns out that they need, it can be hard from an investor perspective. That said, I think there's still opportunity in alternative protein. We have to think beyond like beef, chicken, fish. So for example, we made a pre-seed investment in a company that is applying traditional fermentation techniques. So not using bioreactors, but they're actually using old brewery equipment to produce casein for the vegan cheese market, right? So when you think about alternative dairy and cheese, like, non-dairy milk is so common now, but vegan cheese, I mean, it's less than 1% market penetration. And we think a lot of that is because of these taste and texture issues. So if we can get, a more natural product that's, better tasting, that I think would be game changing. And then, yeah, I'd say that's probably the main thing.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. It's capital intensive, right? So you have to continue to raise money. So the way we think about lab grown meats is like the market, is the meat eater going to adopt this? If they don't, then that's probably not going to actually be a big enough thing. And then the other side of it is you have vegetarians that may not ever eat meat before that won't go into that either. So it's the market dynamics are interesting there. We look at precision fermentation that can reduce CapEx and be the infrastructure plumbing for a lot of brands to use is where we want to invest in. And one of our investments is Zote. That's what they do. They can essentially reduce the cost by like 10x for fermentation. It opens up a lot of capacity. And that's really where a lot of the cost is there's not a lot of opportunity to use fermentation because it's taken up by big pharma from a capacity perspective. So how do you increase capacity, lower costs? Like those are the where you want to invest in.
I would say we look a lot at consumer demand. So there's lots of different types of alternative proteins that we're seeing come out. So whether it's just the alternative proteins or if it's lab grown meats, I think we see a difference in what is more attractive to the consumer. I personally, I think I want to try and see more of the lab grown meats. I think that flavor kind of comes through a little bit better through that. But you're looking at a large market of people who are vegetarians, people who are vegetarian based on personal beliefs or based on the sustainability aspect of it. So if we're able to create lab grown meats that hit that sustainability market, you're able to continue to grow in a new market as we continue along.
So with precision fermentation, there's so much buzz around meat, dairy, and for good reason, but there's huge opportunity in coffee and chocolate. Both of those industries are in crisis right now due to climate change, supply chain disruption, civil war, name your problem, it's there. So yeah, and honestly, growing plant cells in a lab is a lot easier than growing animal cells. And we've seen a few innovators, Israel is doing a lot of work in that. And yeah, I mean, there's huge opportunity there. And so when we think of it, we think of push and pull factors. So, I don't think consumers wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, I want an alternative chocolate. It's more like they might need an alternative chocolate. Like, if you suddenly have to pay $20 for a chocolate bar, like people aren't going to like that. So can precision fermentation, even bring down the cost in some aspects? I think there's opportunity there.
And so I think one question I want to follow on here is in these kind of spaces or even otherwise, is your philosophy for investing, would you invest in companies who are doing the same thing in a category, or would you not?
No, I think it's like a conflict of interest, to be honest. I think like you're going to pick a horse and you're going to do everything you can to that company to succeed. And if you're investing in two companies that are doing similar things, I think it can put you in a pretty tough situation as an investor of, even like sharing knowledge and things like that. So we wouldn't do that, no.
I think we're open to it depending on the size of the market, and we probably wouldn't do two investments out of the same fund that are doing the same thing. That would be a bit too much. But like within vegan cheese, I mean, we were investors in New Culture from a previous fund, and now we've invested in Ox Labs, so which is the pre-seed company I mentioned before. So I think we're open to it. It just can't be like in the same fund because of some of those conflicts of interest.
Being a state-funded organization, we get to not worry too much about investing in more than one organization that's doing the same work. So, it's not been a huge conflict of interest for us.
Okay.
I think we are open to it too, but they can be within the same category, but not really doing the exact thing. So say if we are looking at companies within the carbon capture space, if they are capturing carbon using the same technology, we might not. But if it's slightly different from the other, then we would. And again, the carbon capture market is so big. So we want to have more investments in that space, but we want to see like slight differences in the technology.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we've come to the end of our panel session here. So Simona, Aditi, Cam, Jacob, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us here.